Welcome to the Steroids Podcast with your host, Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Boom! Boom! Let's get started here. The Steroids Podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Guide to Roids, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Now, for the first time in bodybuilding history, you have someone with no corporate interests and no obligation to please anyone, not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the information, the whole truth, not a full truth and a half truth, full truth. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the keys to the Lamborghini, gives you the information, and lets you decide what to do with it. It's a crime this information has been suppressed this long. Now let's get on with the podcast.
First question of the day is from Roger, and it's a good one. He asks, how would it benefit someone's life, and why would someone want to take anabolic steroids who isn't a competitive bodybuilder? And I think a lot of the people, the majority of the people who use steroids are not competitive bodybuilders, but just your average gym goer in the gym. And the reason to use them is because when you're putting a lot of time and energy into the gym, you want to have results to show for all that time and energy. So for one reason to use them would be, hey, if you decided that going to the gym is a passion of yours and it's something you really like doing, well, then you're going to want to use tools in order to make what you're doing, your passion, more fun, and to be able to take it to a higher level, like a higher skill level, a higher level of attainment. And that provides a way of working towards something and satisfaction in life, because you have a goal, you have a picture of what you want to do, and then you're able to go and do this journey where you change what you look like, change your body, and it's fun to do that. So a lot of guys who are natural, they really love going to the gym and they love bodybuilding, but they sometimes look in the mirror and feel to themselves like, man, I spend so much time and effort with my food and going to the gym and with thinking about gym and everything, but this is all I have to show for it. And those guys, you know, that's definitely a logical, reasonable thing to be feeling like, because with a lot of other like hobbies or skills or passions, the more work you put into it, you can keep on leveling up and get higher and higher and higher. But with natural bodybuilding, I mean, you hit a wall after a few years. You hit a wall and you can keep on making some adjustments, but you never get where you're trying to go. So it allows you to more fully enjoy going to the gym and doing bodybuilding. A lot of guys, when they first signed up and decided, hey, I want to go get a gym membership, like they had this picture of themselves in their head, like, I want to be fucking jacked, like I want to have huge muscles and be super strong. And if that's not materializing for them naturally after a few years, that's like natural to feel frustrated and to think, okay, well, the reason why I went to the gym was not to get to this natural limit. It was to get to this more jacked up, juiced up physique. That was always the original reason for entering the gym, not to just get fit and put on a bit of muscle, put on a bit of strength, something like that. No, it was to attain a much higher level of development. That's what a lot of guys are doing when they go to the gym. So that's one reason to use, or that guys choose to use steroids who are not competitive bodybuilders. But another reason too is that also being bigger and more powerful physically affects the way that people treat you. So when you have a bigger, more developed body, for one thing, you're more attractive to women. That's just the way it is. And when you're bigger and it's not fat and you have as much mass as, mostly anybody, because if you're like 220 pounds or so, unless people are fat, other guys are fat, you're going to compare pretty favorably, no matter if you're short or average height or even if you're tall. But you're going to match up to other guys more favorably, and it affects the way that people treat you, because people just naturally give more respect to bigger, stronger, more powerful individuals. It's instinct. And I mean, that's been shown in the workplace too, by having like taller men normally having like higher job positions and stuff, like more job promotions, because they're bigger, they're physically larger in stature, and it has certain advantages. And anybody that's taken steroids can tell you that, life changed a few months after they started taking steroids, because people treat them differently. When you're going through your daily life and you're interacting with people, they give, if you're a steroid user, compared to when you weren't a steroid user, you will just receive more respect without doing anything to deserve it, simply because you are bigger, stronger, more physically imposing, and physically powerful. It's just a natural instinct that people have. And everybody who's, used roids can tell you that, yeah, there was a huge difference here, because that's the way it is. That's the way it is. That's the way it is in this world with these human beings. So that's another reason why someone would want to use steroids if they weren't a bodybuilding competitor. But there's a lot of other reasons. I think it's mostly, though, just that going to the gym is fun, and you want to get a lot back for your results. And the reason you started going to the gym is because you envisioned having a certain outcome, and so you're doing what it takes to meet your goals. All right, the next question is from Ed. He says, really appreciate all your work. People seem overly scared of performance-enhancing drugs to a ridiculous level. It feels a bit like the dark age, to be honest. Yeah, I agree with you. He says it sucks ass for people to be put down for even discussing these things. You can definitely tell all the research and testing that you've done. He's going to be jumping on a Tren A cycle, going to run 350 milligrams a week. He just tried Tren Enanthate at the end of his last cycle at 150 milligrams per week, but he definitely felt it, especially its nutrition partitioning effects. He had serious sugar cravings. In terms of health and gains, how would you go about carb intake while on Tren? Thanks, man. Yeah, so with the carb intake on Tren, the great thing about Tren is that it does better than any other steroid, is that it functions whether or not you give it food. And that is such a powerful thing, because absolutely carbs make it work better for building muscle. But I'm sure that you felt this a little bit on your Tren Enanthate cycle, and you'll also feel this on your Tren acetate cycle that you're going to be doing here, especially at 350 milligrams per week. That's the golden number. That's the magic number where you get the full character and effects of Tren. When you get to that 100 milligrams every other day of Tren acetate, that opens up a new realm in what you knew was possible for your body. And in bodybuilding, when you go to the gym, the level of performance that you were able to have there, and the way you feel while you're lifting weights, working out, it's such an incredible feeling. The pump is unreal, and you really feel this all-powerful euphoria feeling from Trenbolone, and that's why it is it's so such a controversial drug, because it has all those effects, and then it has a bunch of negative effects to go with it, and so it's a balancing act. And it's going to be cool though, man. Like, definitely the best cycles that I've ever run were with, potent Tren. And so as far as the carbs, that's the thing, is that Superdrol, if you don't want to use Tren, Superdrol can do a lot of what Trenbolone does. So Superdrol at like 30 milligrams per day is pretty much does to your physique very similarly, and also your strength very similarly to what Trenbolone does. But it doesn't do that unless you feed it a lot of carbohydrates. And so that's a common theme with a lot of steroids, is that they really need carbohydrates in order to get those performance enhancing benefits, where they're super pumped up and they have all that glycogen fuel storage, and you're really just smashing the weights. And one thing you'll notice that is pretty cool, and you can try out next time you go to the gym, is you can just immediately when you finish weightlifting, you can eat gummy bears, or you can eat some other kind of sugary treat, or drink something like a couple Gatorades or something. This time, the post-workout window, that first like 60 minutes after you've finished weightlifting when you're on steroids, is such a amplified time for recovery and muscle building. Like, when you're natural, it doesn't really matter quite so much. It's like, as long as you eat sometime in the next 3 hours after weightlifting. But when you're on steroids, that first 60 minutes when you're done, you can take advantage of stuff like sugar and like whey protein, and it's like throwing gasoline on the fire, like sending a freaking Roman candle shooting into like a bottle of gasoline or something. It's wild, because your muscles just suck up that sugar like crazy. So that is steroids in general, being on steroids in general. Like, in order for them to really have their best effects and be working the way that you imagine them to and want them to, they've got to have carbohydrates in there. And out of all the steroids, the only one that can still function without that and still be like kicking major ass is Trenbolone. It is if you don't eat any carbs, for example, on Trenbolone, that shit will recomposition you like a motherfucker. So you'll still gain strength and shit, and get hard and gain a lot of strength, hard muscles. But then if you do eat the carbs, you can eat a lot of carbs, and they'll get filled into your muscles, and you will get very strong and very big and grow a lot of muscle and have like the best gym sessions ever. So if you're trying to grow on Trenbolone, my opinion is eat a lot of carbs, because you can handle them. It has major nutrient partitioning effects, and you can eat a lot of junk food actually on Trenbolone and gain like pure muscle. It will, if you give it food, it turns that food into muscle. That's how Tren is. And if you don't give it food, well, it starts burning your fat and still kind of keeps building muscle. That shit is crazy. So that's what I think about Trenbolone. If you have high blood pressure issues, okay, carbohydrates are going to be a factor. This is a problem that a lot of bodybuilders have, is they have high blood pressure. And one of the reasons for this is because they are eating a lot of carbohydrates. And if you eat it really indiscriminately, like, how they say like clean food and dirty food. So eating the dirty food, the fast food or the junk food, it raises your blood pressure. It has a lot of processed ingredients and impurities. and then just the carbs in general, because the carbs attract a lot of water into your body with it. So if you do have blood pressure issues, the solution would be to clean up your diet and try to get your calories all from clean food. So if you're eating things like, the only carbs you're eating are things like rice and potatoes, that doesn't really give you a lot of water retention. But if, your carbs are coming from like pizzas and shit, burritos or something, shit like that, then it does. I know it sounds weird, but conventional wisdom and bro science there is the way that pans out in the real world. So if you're having blood pressure issues on steroids, the way to handle it is to first clean up your diet so that you're not eating junk food, you're eating all natural, unprocessed foods. And then the second thing to do is to reduce your carb intake. And if you reduce your carb intake to under 50 grams per day, man, you just don't have blood pressure issues, because you drain a lot of the internal pressure out of your body. Since you're not eating those carbs, you don't hold the extra 2 grams of water inside your body for every gram of carb you eat. So lowers your blood pressure a lot. And steroid users, make sure you remember that one, because that's an important one. Don't want to have to be on dialysis or destroy your kidneys from high blood pressure. That would be terrible. All right, next question is from Aaron. But before, I want to clarify for you guys who that was serious about the blood pressure, but that's not something that happens in 1 month or in 2 months. That's something not even that happens in 1 year or 2 years. That's something that happens over many years. If you have high blood pressure over many years, it can destroy your kidneys over time. So that's something that when you notice it, you want to make sure that you do something about it and don't just let it be a thing that's hanging around for years, okay? Having chronic high blood pressure. That's no good. All right, so Aaron's question is, hey, Dan, I've done a cycle. It's a pain. Everything that's involved, such as injections, keeping estrogen down with an AI, that's an anti-estrogen tablet, and taking a PCT like HCG, and all that to get my balls to get back to normal. My question is, what's the point in doing all this if I lose the gains after a month of discontinuing? I gained 15 pounds, then lost the same amount of weight in a month being off. I still train hard and get the calories in. I don't get why I couldn't maintain it. Yeah, that was a really good question. Thanks for sending that one in, Aaron. So there's a lot to be said about what you said about it's a pain. Taking steroids is a hassle. And so I get a lot of guys, especially when I was in Thailand, a lot of guys who weren't bodybuilders that I would hang out with would see me and see that, like especially women in Thailand and men had like a really good reaction to muscle. It's seen like as, something really to be celebrated and to be proud of there. It's really a good social status symbol. And so they'd see that, and I was always open, like, yeah, I'm a bodybuilder in Thailand, I use steroids. So they would ask me, like, should I take steroids? Like they wouldn't even be like gym guys. Well, they would be gym guys, but not real serious gym guys. They were like casual weightlifters that went to the gym, 1 or 2 times a week or something like that. They would see the kind of respect and attention that I got from men and women for being just for being muscular when over there in Asia, and it would make them think about using steroids and if maybe they should do that. And they would ask me, they'd say, well, what do you think, man? Like, do you think I should use steroids? And I would say, you know what, man? I got to say this. It's a hassle. So this is what I would always tell them. And I would say it's a hassle. So unless this is something that you really want to do and you're willing to, make changes in your life and not just be some silly little thing that you're messing around with, but something that you're committed to for a while, more like years, or bodybuilding. If bodybuilding is something you want to be committed to for a while, and you're going to be okay with making, big changes in your life and dealing with the hassles that come with doing this, like Aaron said in his question, injections, keeping estrogen down with tablets, taking HCG to get his shrunk balls back to normal after cycle, losing his gains when he's off steroids, and then gaining them back again when he gets back on steroids, and shutting his fertility down again, and then having to do another PCT and take Nolvadex and HCG. Like, this is something that you don't want to get involved in unless you're really serious about what you're doing. And if you're not really serious, and you're not like, I have serious goals that I have to meet, okay, then it's probably better just to steer clear. That's my advice. That was always my advice to those guys in Thailand. So if they were guys that weren't really into bodybuilding or weightlifting, but they just did it casually, and they could see, wow, there's a lot of benefits to taking steroids, but it was just something they did casually. It wasn't something that they were really passionate about. They'd ask me, should I take steroids? And, my opinion was like, probably not. You should probably steer clear, because it's just going to be adding like stress and a hassle to your life, and it's not something that you're really into. Now, if somebody wanted to do like one cycle or something, yeah, absolutely, go do it. Just to experiment with this, and to see if it's for them, what they think about it, or see what it's all about, see what this shit is all about. If they just wanted to do a cycle, that's very natural. And you know what? You could do a freaking cycle and never even shut your testicles down. If you just go, like, if you want to take steroids and figure out what steroids are all about, you can just take HCG while you're taking the steroids, okay? You can take HCG, take 1,000 milligrams a couple times a week while you're taking your steroids, and your balls will never shrink. They'll never stop producing sperm. They'll never stop producing testosterone. And then when you're finished taking the steroids, keep taking the HCG for a couple more weeks, and then stop that, and you will have done your steroid cycle, and you will have kept your balls functioning the whole time, and there's no fear of like some kind of like permanent low testosterone level or permanent no fertility, okay? Let me tell you a little bit about fertility. So men and women both use the hypogonadal pituitary axis, okay? Or the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis. I messed that up royally. So I've messed it up royally. So it's the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, okay? And that's how they their body and their brain regulates their fertility. And the fertility is controlled by a feedback loop, and that means signals going between the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the gonads, which in the female is the ovary, and in the male is the testicles, okay? So the way that birth control works is the same way that testosterone works to shut down your natural testosterone and sperm production when you take it, okay? So when she takes birth control pills are a combination of estrogen and progesterone, okay? And then steroids are molecules that are similar to testosterone, the male sex hormone. So the female sex hormone, the female sex steroids are estrogen and progesterone, and the male sex steroid is testosterone. So when she takes the birth control tablets, her hypothalamus, the birth control tablets are progesterone and estrogen, her sex steroids. The hypothalamus recognizes the high levels of the estrogen and progesterone in her blood, and then it shuts off releasing a chemical called gonadotrophin releasing hormone that would go to her pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland, in response to receiving that signal would then, from the gonadotrophin releasing hormone, would then release luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone that would then go to her ovaries, and then her ovaries would do their reproductive issues and make estrogen and progesterone and stuff, okay? But since she's taking it artificially in tablets, her brain says, oh, there's too much, there's enough in here, I don't need to make any, and it shuts off. So it shuts off her fertility, and she stops being able to have a baby while she's taking the birth control tablets, and she doesn't make her own hormones while she's taking the birth control tablets. It's hormone replacement. So when you take the steroids, it's the same thing, okay? Your hypothalamus recognizes, oh, too much testosterone and estrogen and too much sex steroids, and so it shuts off stimulating the pituitary gland, which stimulates the testicles, okay? So that's how that works. So people that say, like, oh, there's permanent shutdown from taking steroids, like there's some kind of demonic chemical or like meth or something. I mean, I'm like, what the hell, dude? Women are using birth control tablets and coming off of the birth control tablets and having babies all the time. It's not like some crazy thing. It's just, it's like when you interrupt the feedback loop, the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, it turns off. And when you stop and you have sufficient time afterwards, rest, and that sometimes takes between like 1, 2, or even 3 years before, that full production will come back and the woman will be able to get pregnant. It's the same way in the male. If you've got hypogonadism and, you may need medicine, like sometimes with females, after they've taken birth control pills for a long time, they go to the doctor and that doctor gives them Clomid and HCG. and so, when you're a bodybuilder and you've been using steroids, that's what you do. You take Clomid and HCG in order to turn your testicles back on after you're finished using steroids and get your testosterone, your natural testosterone, and your sperm production back. So if you're worried about being, permanently infertile from steroids, that's like really not something that is a common occurrence. And with HCG, you can prevent yourself from ever even being shut down if you use that while you use steroids. And then also you'll be able to use that for PCT to turn your testicles back on. So the bottom line is that the reason why the testicles turn back on or turn off is the same reason why the ovaries turn on or turn off when they are taking birth control or when a man is taking anabolic steroids. It's for the same purposes, okay? And so most of the stuff that you hear about, like horror stories about fertility never returning is from online. It's always online stuff. And there's a lot of really ridiculous, insane horror stories about a lot of medical conditions online. It is real, though, that some guys will have permanently low testosterone unless they see a doctor after they've used steroids. Some guys have to have a doctor help them use the HCG correctly over the long term, and I'm talking like months and, waiting years for their natural testosterone to return. So hypogonadal is a real thing, or hypogonadism is a real thing, but it's not common, and it isn't any different from a woman taking birth control pills or a man taking anabolic steroids. The infertility would come from the same reason. And, taking birth control pills is not considered to be the most risky, crazy, dangerous thing by society. So as far as to answer Aaron's question again, just one last time, if you couldn't maintain your gains after the cycle, that's because you didn't have the steroids in your body anymore, And if you don't have the steroids in your body anymore, then your body is going to start slowly reverting back to the way it was when you weren't taking steroids. So it's the same way as if you go to the gym and you work out and then you stop working out. Well, your body is going to start slowly reverting back to the way it was when you didn't work out. So when you add or subtract a stimulus, that's what happens. So when you got off the steroids, you know, your body slowly starts going back to the way it was natural until you get back on the steroids again. And that's just the way it is. All right, next question is from Pogrom. Just finished a pointless Anavar 50 milligrams every day, 4-week cycle. Do you recommend PCT? If so, what should I take? Well, the main way that you're going to know if you need PCT after a short Anavar cycle like that is, are your testicles shrunk? Like if you have small balls that are shrunk, then you definitely do need to do PCT, or else you're most likely going to have low testosterone for a while. But if your balls aren't shrunk and, you know, you can get an erection fine, then, you know, you probably don't need to do a PCT and you're probably okay. So this is genetic response. Some people, when they take any kind of male hormones, so even a mild one like Anavar, they immediately stop producing all testosterone and sperm. But then other guys still produce a bit, and then if they stop, it comes back real quickly. But then other guys don't, and they need some kind of a kickstart. But generally, the way that you would know if you need to do a PCT, just anecdotally, would be you'd feel your balls and say, are they shrunk? And figure that out. And then when you have an orgasm, like if not a lot of sperm comes out, not a lot of semen comes out, that would be another symptom of being shut down. And then the other one would be, is it easy to get an erection? So if all systems go, you're probably fine and don't need a PCT. But if you're having trouble in those areas, then you should probably take a PCT. And like I said in the past, HCG is the best PCT drug, and it's been studied the most and shown to be effective in studies by doctors when given to guys who have used steroids and have hypogonadism, like long-term hypogonadism. They've been able to reverse it by giving them HCG, and usually the dosages for that are around 2,000 to 3,000 IUs per week in those studies. And then the other best PCT drug is Clomid, because that works on your brain. It works on your hypothalamus to start the hypothalamic pituitary testicular axis. It kickstarts it off right at the beginning of it. In comparison to HCG, which communicates directly with the testicles. So HCG communicates directly with the testicles. It's very effective for turning your reproductive system right back on. So I'll just tell you that if I wasn't taking HCG, right? Because I do take HCG at 500 IUs per week year round, because I like to have a functioning natural reproductive system, okay? But if I wasn't taking it, my balls would be shrunk. But, you know, I am taking it, so my balls are not shrunk. But anyways, let's pretend for a minute that I wasn't taking it and I was taking steroids. So at the same I was taking steroids and not HCG. So that would shrink my balls. So then I would start taking the HCG, right? Okay, now within, I'd take like a shot, right, on Monday, and then I would take another shot on like Wednesday, right? So if I did like 1,000 IUs Monday, 1,000 IUs Wednesday, okay, then probably about on Thursday, or maybe Wednesday even, maybe Wednesday night or something. So 3 to 4 days after that first shot and after the second shot, I would notice my balls get way bigger if they were shrunk from steroids, and I took the HCG on that schedule. So it takes about 3 or 4 days to kick in, and then your balls will go back to normal size and start producing normal testosterone and a normal amount of sperm too. Pretty crazy stuff. All right. The next question is from Suave, and he says, do you need anti-estrogen tablets for 250 milligrams test propionate per week stacked with oral Turinabol? You know, you probably won't need them, but I would keep them on hand because, you know, estrogen is kind of a finicky thing, and it can kind of spike. And I mean, you might need an anti-estrogen on that dose, or you might not. I'd say it's like a 50% chance. You probably, if you're asking this, I would guess this might be your first cycle. And, you know, the individual response between individuals is so varying when it comes to how much estrogen you produce from testosterone. Some guys produce barely any, you know, and can take like high dosages of testosterone. They just don't have much of the aromatase enzyme, the enzyme that is it's made by fat cells, and then it floats around in the blood, and it changes testosterone, and transforms it into estrogen. Okay, that's the aromatase enzyme. Some guys produce more of this enzyme than others. There's a lot of enzymes in your blood that metabolize chemicals. They're made by different organs in the body, the enzymes. The liver makes a lot of enzymes too, okay? And different people genetically produce different amounts of these enzymes. And they have powerful effects in the body, and this is a reason why metabolism of drugs or breakdown of drugs is different in different people. So if you haven't used steroids before and you don't know, you know, how much estrogen you produce, then you absolutely have to have anti-estrogen tablets on hand during your 250 milligram test probe cycle stacked with oral Turinabol. If you started the cycle without having that, then what if you get problems? You know, like what if you run into problems? Because you could, just, you know, I would, if I was using 250 milligrams of testosterone propionate per week, I would need a little bit of anti-estrogen tablet. I would probably need like maybe 2 milligrams of Arimidex per week, or maybe 1 or 2 25 milligram Exemestane tablets per week. I would need to take to prevent estrogen side effects like burning, itching nipples, and gyno, swollen prostate, acne, like whitehead acne, is estrogenic acne, trouble peeing, stuff like that. So I would need to take those anti-estrogen tablets for the dosage that you're planning on using. You might not, but if you've never used steroids before, you got to have those things, everything you need in case you get side effects, the drugs you'll need to combat them. You need to have them with you before you start taking the steroids, or else you could, you know, run into some permanent side effects like gyno bitch tits, you know, when you grow the tissue under your nipple, and that's unsightly. That takes about 48 hours, though, after you notice the side effects. After you notice the side effects, the itchy, burning nipples, you got about 48 hours to take some anti-estrogen tablets till that turns permanent. So you gotta be on the ball, man. You gotta have everything you need before you start. I don't have any gyno. You know, I've been using steroids for years, and you know what? It's fine. Whenever I notice estrogen, I just take some anti-estrogen tablet. You know, I'll either take Arimidex or Letrozole or Exemestane, and I just have it on hand, and I take it on an as-needed basis. So when I feel symptoms of high estrogen, then I go to my Arimidex and I take an Arimidex tablet. Okay? I take it as needed. It's not some kind of urgent thing or something you need to be freaked out about. It's just something that you need to be confident that you have legit supplies on hand to deal with the side effects. But you don't need to be freaked out or be scared or worried or anything like that, because you have time to react. The guys who get screwed and get like some kind of stupid permanent side effect is the guy who wasn't prepared. He didn't start with everything he needed. He started taking steroids before he had the drugs to deal with side effects that he needed to, in case he got side effects from steroids. Okay, that's my opinion on that. Our mesh says, does 25 milligrams T-ball build as much muscle as 50 milligrams D-ball? Does 300 milligrams Tren build as much muscle as 600 milligrams Tren? I don't really understand the last part of that question, but I understand what he's getting at. And this is, you gotta not make things so scientific, okay? Bodybuilding, chemicals, if you try to get too scientific with it, you're focusing on the wrong thing. These minute kind of details where you're trying to figure out like the exact science of all this shit, it isn't going to matter in the long run. The gains that you want, the physique, the performance enhancing drugs, the benefits and everything, it's more general than this. So don't get too caught up in these small details, because you'll find that you're running in circles and not accomplishing what you're setting out to accomplish. But I will answer, 25 milligrams T-ball, does it build as much as 50 milligrams D-ball? No, it does not. No, it does not. And 50 milligrams of Dianabol per day is a very strong effect. The effect that has on your body, the effect that would have on my body, is, wow. Huge changes within days of taking it. Within days of taking it, and huge gains in the perceived size and fuel storage and pump of my muscles. Massive pumps in the gym, and massive strength increases, and also able to eat tons of food and turn it into muscle. Okay, but I'm just going to say the same dosage of T-ball. Okay, so I was just now describing 50 milligrams of D-ball per day. 50 milligrams of Turinabol T-ball per day, that would give me a boost. It would make me stronger a bit. It would make me a bit bigger, like a cosmetic effect, fuel storage. It would make me be able to eat more food and turn it into muscle and recover from workouts better by doing that. But it wouldn't be like this whammo, slam, pow effect like D-ball at 50 milligrams would give, okay? The T-ball, it's just not like a really strong sledgehammer type of anabolic steroid hormone. It's like a nice addition, like a nice edge. That's what you should think of T-ball as, is like, this is going to give me a nice edge, but it's not like this freaking sledgehammer, drop the bomb, baby, like D-ball is, okay? D-ball at 50 milligrams per day. D-ball at 100 milligrams per day is freaking sick. But D-ball at 50 milligrams per day is also freaking sick, okay? It's going to freaking transform you, okay, while you are on that stuff. So that's the comparison of Turinabol and D-ball strength at the same milligrammage. Next question is from Alec. He says, been on TRT for 2 years, and for several days after each testosterone injection, he feels sick and has flu symptoms. Anything to prevent this? Yeah, this is a pretty common thing that happens to guys. So you're having a reaction to the hormone that is suspended in oil that you are injecting into yourself. So your body is getting this flu-like symptom because it's noticing that there's stuff that's been injected into your body from the outside, and it's having kind of like a freak-out reaction to it. I don't know if I'd call it an allergic reaction, but it's, making your body do stuff that does not feel good. So usually you won't get this on pharmaceutical grade testosterone. So can I ask Alec, are you using pharmaceutical grade testosterone for your TRT? Is it coming from the doctor, or are you using TRT that, testosterone that you got from the gym or something? Because if testosterone has, if it was made with inferior ingredients, like is done with a lot of underground lab-made steroids that don't come from the doctor. They're made with inferior ingredients a lot of times, and a lot of these ingredients are irritants. And when they get injected into your body does not like it, and that's what causes like swelling and redness at the injection site a lot of times. And what will also cause what you have is called testosterone flu, or sometimes they say test flu. But usually good high quality testosterone does not do this. If you are using pharmaceutical grade testosterone that came from the doctor and you're still having this, and it's been going on for 2 years, there may be something like the oil that they're using to produce this specific product, or one of the sterilization ingredients is you're allergic to it, and your body doesn't like it. So in that case, changing the brand could help you, because the different brands are made with different ingredients. Some brands, have the testosterone suspended in cottonseed oil. Others have it suspended in grapeseed oil. So there's a possibility that you are allergic to one of the ingredients used in your brand of testosterone if you're experiencing testosterone flu on pharmaceutical grade testosterone from the doctor. And if that is the case, definitely let your doctor know, and you guys look into getting a different brand, a different pharmaceutical grade brand from the doctor that is made with different ingredients. Figure out what the ingredients are, because it says on the bottle, on the vial of your testosterone, it'll say what oils and what alcohols are in there to sterilize it and to suspend the testosterone crystals in the oil, and what it's made out of. And you can figure out that, and then try a different brand that is made with different suspension ingredients. All right, next question is from Steven. What is a good bulk cycle for an intermediate bodybuilder with steroids experience? Yeah, so he just wants to know what's going to be a strong cycle, because if you're an intermediate bodybuilder with steroids experience, you don't want to do some kind of cycle that's not going to get you very good gains. So I know where he's coming from. And the answer to this is that what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take enough steroids that is going to equal between 1,000 and 2,000 milligrams per week, because that's what the dosage that most of the guys who are jacked as fuck at the gym are running. Okay, somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams per week would be an average dosage of steroids for that look. Guys who look like animals, look like a house, look like freaking jacked, look huge, those guys who you see them and you say, I'm not talking about an IFBB pro, I'm not talking about that at all, but I'm just talking about, you go to the gym and you see dudes and you're like, damn, that guy is jacked as fuck. Guys that look like that are almost always using steroids at dosages of total dosage. All the steroids that they're using combined together, somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams per week would be the total, if you added up the milligram dosage of all the steroids that they use on average during their cycles. So if you're an intermediate bodybuilder with steroids experience, that's pretty much where you're going to want to start, is because that's already well known that that's the way it is. Well, we are kind of in the dark ages though with steroids, so it's like nothing is well known. Everything seems to be a question for unless you're in the know, then everything is a question. So it's a really good question that you ask, and I would always go with starting with 3 cc's of testosterone per week, because that's where I feel that the full character of testosterone comes in with the least side effects. You get the really good nutrient partitioning effects of it, and you get the big fullness in the muscles, and you get the good recovery from workouts. I feel like 500 milligrams per week is a little low to get the full character and effect of the drug. So 750 milligrams per week, for me, that gives, or 700 milligrams per week of Propionate is my preference. So 100 milligrams every day is my preference. I get the full character and the full effect of the drug at that dosage, and most people I know, it's the same with them. So start out with that, because testosterone makes every other steroid you use work way better. And then, you want to stack that with either an injectable that would be one that you like. So usually that would be Primobolan, Deca, or Trenbolone, because those are the only, or Equipoise, because those are the only real injectable steroids other than testosterone that people are commonly using. So you can run any of those at dosages between 600 to 1,000 milligrams per week and get great results from them, with the exception of Tren. You only need to run that at 300 milligrams per week to get great results from it, and you can get good results from 150 milligrams per week of Trenbolone. But the other ones, the other injectables, you're going to need between 600 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams per week. And then as far as like my favorite steroids, I like using like oral steroids in my cycles, because oral steroids are really powerful, man. Like they have such great synergy with testosterone. So I think Anadrol is one of the best steroids. Anadrol, it really is great in the gym. The effects are great. The pumps are great. The strength is great. It even makes you strong without eating food. And it makes you just like constantly bigger and more full and pumped up with like harder looking muscles. And that's the thing, is that some people say like there's water retention from Anadrol. Man, for the most part, I don't really see that. Yeah, when I see people on Anadrol, I don't see them looking like sucked down like they do when they use Winstrol, but I do see them looking like with the muscles bulging against the skin, and it looks like any water retention is inside the muscles, not outside the muscles, between the muscle and the skin. It seems like Anadrol is almost a hardener, because it doesn't add a bunch of subcutaneous water, except for in some people that have weird physiology. But the average dude, he doesn't get all like bloated, because Anadrol doesn't have any estrogen conversion. Anadrol doesn't have any estrogen conversion, so he doesn't get all like bloated and shit like he would from like D-ball. And he just gets bigger and harder and stronger with the muscles bulging against the skin, and it makes you strong if you're not eating a bunch of food or not eating carbs. You can still be like damn strong on Anadrol. So I like Anadrol. Superdrol is more effective and stronger than Anadrol, and I do also really like Superdrol. But Superdrol is pretty damn toxic. So if you take Superdrol for more than like 4 or 5 weeks, you'll start to like get sick, and it might mess with your eyes. It might make like your eyes like red or like gray or something, and it can start like harming your insides pretty quickly, after 4 or 5 weeks. But with Anadrol, you can take that for a more extended period of time, and 50 to 100 milligrams of Anadrol per day always works, and it always like majorly kicks ass. 50 to 100 milligrams of Anadrol per day combined with like 750 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams of testosterone per week is like awesome. And it seems to be able to be run for long periods of time without having extended toxicity. It is prescribed by doctors for humans, and it says this when you buy Pharmaceutical Grade Anadrol. It says that it's prescribed for humans at 1 to 4 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So I'm 100 kilograms. I'm about 220 pounds, and so that would mean that a doctor could prescribe me anywhere. The recommended prescription dosage is anywhere from 1 to 400 milligrams per day of Anadrol for me. I have experimented with taking 300 milligrams of Anadrol per day, and that made me super sick, made me need to lay in bed, and made it so that I couldn't eat, and had really bad acid reflux indigestion. So, not fun. If you get indigestion or acid reflux from taking oral steroids, the solution to that is taking baking soda and drinking it, or you can also buy baking soda in tablets called sodium bicarbonate tablets. If you get that acidic acid reflux in your stomach and coming up your throat from oral steroids, which a lot of guys do, or like the longer you take them or the higher dosages, or if you take clenbuterol, this can happen. You can get rid of that really nasty acid reflux where you get this burning, disgusting feeling in your throat all day. You can get rid of that by taking sodium bicarbonate tablets, or just getting baking soda and mixing it up and drinking it, and it works really well. So yeah, that's what I would do. I think a great intermediate cycle would be for some guy with experience would be 750 to 1,000 milligrams of testosterone per week with 50 to 100 milligrams of Anadrol per day, experimenting with those dosages. All right, next question is from Body Power. What is the longest period you have stacked Winstrol and Superdrol together? The longest period I've stacked Winstrol and Superdrol together, I took 50 milligrams of Winstrol, and I took 20 to 30 milligrams of Superdrol per day with that. I'd do that for about 4 to 5 weeks. Yeah, that's about the period for me when I get the best bang for the buck, and then from there it starts to slowly but surely affect my health negatively more and more. Lee asks, a lot of your book, you emphasize high testosterone dosages. That's my book, Ultimate Guide to Roids. Apparently Lee is a reader of it. How did you keep all of your hair with the high testosterone dosages? Yeah, so hair loss is a pretty easy explanation, and you either have the genetics for it or you don't, okay? So there are guys competing on the Mr. Olympia stage like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jay Cutler who have full heads of hair. And then there are other guys like Phil Heath who have no hair, they're bald. And so if you have the genetics to lose your hair and you use steroids, especially testosterone or Trenbolone, then your hair is going to fall out when you use the steroids, okay? But if you don't have those genetics, it won't affect your hair. The reason why testosterone makes some people get hair loss is because they have the genes for hair loss. And that gene, when it has DHT or dihydrotestosterone attached to the hair follicle cell, that gene turns on. And this gene then programs the cell to die. Okay? So the cell is then killed when it feels that or experiences the presence of the dihydrotestosterone molecule. So every man has this to some little extent, but I really mean little when he hits puberty. Because when you hit puberty, your hairline moves back, okay? And that's a set predetermined amount. And then that's not like male pattern baldness, though. That's just hitting puberty. And then, so for those guys that then, their hairline it doesn't keep receding after they turn like 18 or whatever, it stops, and their hairline is just the same, after they're about 18 years old, then if they use steroids and testosterone, it doesn't make them lose their hair. It's the guys who are gonna lose their hair, or they're gonna lose, they're already losing their hair, or they're gonna lose their hair soon, and then they use steroids or they use testosterone, and the dihydrotestosterone, especially, which is a chemical that gets manufactured in large quantities when guys are using testosterone dosages that are high, will then attach to their scalp, and their genes are coded to say, when you have that dihydrotestosterone, kill the hair follicle cell, so the hair falls out. So one way that is successful in preventing hair loss is, like you said, for guys who have hair loss in their genetics, these are the only guys that have anything to even think about with this. If you don't have hair loss in your genetics, then steroids will not make you lose your hair. Okay? That's why steroids did not make me lose my hair, because I don't have hair loss in my genetics. It's not part of my genetic code. It's not in my genes. Okay? But for guys that do, a protocol or way of using steroids that works to make them not have hair loss is to use DECA instead of testosterone. If they use the DECA instead of testosterone, they don't get any dihydrotestosterone production in their body, and there's nothing to go stimulate their hair follicles to die, because they never receive any dihydrotestosterone message. So what makes dihydrotestosterone is this stuff called 5-alpha reductase, which is another enzyme that's in your body. Okay, so 5-alpha reductase is floating around in your body, in your blood, and when it finds testosterone molecules, it then transforms the testosterone molecule into a more potent molecule called dihydrotestosterone. Okay, and so dihydrotestosterone is 5 times as potent at making male characteristics in the body than testosterone is. Okay, but testosterone is the muscle building hormone. Okay, it's the muscle building hormone, and then dihydrotestosterone is the hormone that's responsible for all the other stuff like puberty. All the changes that you go through in puberty is dihydrotestosterone. But dihydrotestosterone gets inactivated when it enters muscle by an enzyme called 3-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, and that's why it can't build muscle. So that's why testosterone is the muscle-building hormone, and testosterone is the parent hormone, the less potent parent hormone of dihydrotestosterone, activating the androgen receptor, or your male hormone receptors in your cells. So the DHT gets produced from testosterone, but if you don't, by the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, but if you don't take any testosterone, then there is no testosterone in your blood to be converted by the 5-alpha reductase enzyme to dihydrotestosterone, and instead all you have is nandrolone or DECA in your blood. Okay, and the DECA still does interact with the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, but it turns into dihydronandrolone. And dihydronandrolone is something like 80 times weaker than dihydrotestosterone, and it just doesn't activate the receptor, the androgen receptor, the male hormone receptor, and the hair follicle that signals hair loss. So guys that have had hair loss issues from steroids, and they're really worried about that, and they know they have hair loss in their genetics, the guys who have the best success with still using steroids are the guys who use a lot of DECA. On the episode 4 of the podcast, there was a guy who used 1,200 milligrams of DECA per week, and he was a competitor, and he's one of these guys. So there's the DECA spiel, and also Anavar is a really good steroid to use for everything, but also for not having hair loss. So DECA and Anavar is a fantastic stack with no testosterone, for guys who are prone to hair loss. Okay, the next question is from Rod Reese, and he says, if you do not inject testosterone deep enough and it goes into subcutaneous fat tissue, will it get irritated? The answer is yes. If you do not inject testosterone deep enough and it goes into subcutaneous fat tissue, it can get red and swollen and create like a lot of irritation in there. So when this happens, this is always from guys who are using insulin syringes to inject. So if all you can get your hands on to use for an injection is an insulin syringe, just make sure that it's at least half an inch long. Okay, don't get an insulin syringe that has a needle that is less than half an inch long, because you won't be able to get it deep enough into you to prevent this from leaking out and causing irritation and rashes and swelling in your skin. Okay, if you don't do it deep enough, it can leak up out of the hole that you create in the muscle, the oil, and get all mixed up in there with the subcutaneous fat and skin tissue and cause a mess. So this is easily corrected by using 1-inch long needles to do your steroids injections, intramuscular injections with 1-inch long needles. Then you won't have to worry about this at all. Some people even use 1.5-inch needles, but 1-inch needle is fine. That's all it needs to be. That's as deep as it needs to be. And when you do the injection, you bury the whole thing in, okay? But if you're using an insulin syringe, then just make sure it has a 1/2-inch needle, and make sure that you're injecting into a lean area of your body, and that you push it all the way in, and kind of like keep some tension or pressure on that while you're pushing it into the muscle to make sure that it's getting in there as deep as possible. And then you can avoid having that problem of the steroids leaking out of your muscle tissue.
If you would like your questions to be answered on the Steroids Podcast, go to steroidspodcast.com and leave a comment with your questions, or email or private message steroidspodcast@gmail.com or Steroids Podcast on Instagram. Until next time.